Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our XP podcast. Today, we have as your host, Yasser, and I am joined by one of our regular co-hosts, Matt.
Who needs them? Tiffany, Alex, who are they? We don't need them.
And so what's different about this episode that you all are listening to is that this one is going to be one of my fireside chats of the year. This is one of the goals that I had when we did our 2025 goals. And one of those goals was that I wanted to have a one-on-one with each of my co-hosts this year, kind of talk through a conversation that I think made sense. And today, we're going to be having a conversation that I think is going to be a lot of fun. So first of all, before we even get started, Matt, one of the things that I feel like we don't do enough, and I want to kind of get back to a little bit, is kind of just talking through what are we playing right now, what are we enjoying right now, and just kind of kick it there and see where it starts us.
Yeah. Right now, I know it's kind of been a meme with this podcast, like literally from its inception,
Yeah.
that we're obsessed with Kingdom Hearts. I swear, this was not intentional. But I just happened to be restarting Kingdom Hearts 2. I'm working through
Yeah.
the entire collection, platinum each one, trying to prepare
Naturally.
for Kingdom Hearts
Yeah.
4. And so last year I platinumed Kingdom Hearts 1 and Rechain of Memories. And so I'm kind of,
Wow.
I'll be honest, like I'm in a slump as far as there are some games I'm interested in the summertime. Nothing
Yeah.
really that's like, oh, I've got to play this day one. That's happening in the next couple of months. So I was
Interesting.
like, okay, Kingdom Hearts 2 is next on the list. This is a chunky boy.
Yeah.
I need to like set some time. So I'm playing Kingdom Hearts 2 and it's awesome. I have not played this game in a long time and I'm pumped
Interesting.
about it.
Okay. Well, as a follow-up question to that, because it's going to be kind of relevant to our conversation as we kind of go along, how are you playing that game? Is this a game that you're just playing on your console and you're just like in front of your TV? Is it on your portal? Is it something you kind of like switch back and forth depending on your mood and the TV availability? Like, how are you playing it?
See, I played Rechain of Memories and Kingdom Hearts a mix of on my portal and on the console itself.
Okay.
If Kingdom Hearts
Okay.
2 kind of like took a step in the series to like more frenetic gameplay, it was very much more action RPG, like very action game oriented, very quick. I'm also playing on the
Yeah.
hardest difficulty, so it's like you get hit a couple times and you die. So with
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
I didn't want the latency. Like I didn't want to be able to use
Right.
that
Right.
excuse. So I've just been console only.
Okay. So when you were doing it in the first game with the
Mhm.
portal, wasn't that difficult? Because you were probably doing it on the hardest difficulty for that game too. Obviously, it was maybe not as action-packed like you were saying,
Yeah.
but did you still have issues at all because you were playing on a hard difficulty and you've got that latency, or not really?
Some, not honestly, not that much. Like Kingdom Hearts
Okay.
is like you played Kingdom Hearts and you kind of fell off of it,
I
didn't you?
tried. I tried. Yeah, I
It,
tried.
it's slow. Like I knew playing it again, I was like, oh, this is a little bit slower than I remember. Playing Kingdom Hearts 2, I'm like, oh wow, like nothing happened. Like nothing happened in fights for Kingdom Hearts. It was just like very slow, very methodical, and you can get away
Sure.
with a little bit of latency here and there. You just like rubber band across the map, not a huge deal. Kingdom Hearts 2, you're looking at that stupid continue page. It's like, ah, crap.
By the time you get back,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Okay. Do you feel like so it sounds like in general you don't have that issue with your portal, but if a game kind of fits in the criteria where you do have those kind of concerns, like
Mhm.
say if you wanted to play Elden Ring's DLC, obviously you're not gonna probably play that on the portal, right?
Yeah, probably not. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like some of the ones that might need a little bit more snappy attention, I'll probably just stick to the
Yeah.
console. I'll be honest, if this was
Hmm.
a standalone, like if I could download the game onto my portal and play
Yeah.
it, no latency, whatever,
Hmm.
man,
Right.
I would only be playing on Portal. I'll be honest with you. Like I love the
Yeah, yeah.
handheld experience. I used to not be this way. Like even with Switch, like I was that
Uh-huh.
Switch owner that had it on my TV the entire time.
Always plugged in.
Like
Yeah,
I
you're
don't care.
docked.
What are you guys talking about? Like battery life? What's that supposed to mean? Like if the power goes out? Like had no idea what that meant. And now as
Right.
I'm getting older, I'm like, man, it'd be nice if I could take this to go.
Interesting. Interesting. So you think it's due to like the age or like the time of your life
I think it's a time of my
that
life.
you're
Yeah.
focusing more on the portal. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
We'll definitely talk more about that as we go along, but it's a good starting point for sure. To answer that question for myself, I have also been kind of shifting the way that I've been kind of organizing what games I'm playing.
Mm-hmm.
So recently, like we talked about last year, I had this list of games that I wanted to play,
That like
right? And it
mad
was a
Excel
long list
sheet.
of
Are you
games.
still using that?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
I am. But I did make a new version for 2025 because obviously there were games that I completed and I wanted to like get that clutter out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've also completely changed how I'm organizing games because one thing I realized last year was, and you probably can speak to this too, uh, I felt like I was kind of focusing in on one platform when I played a game, where like I've transitioned to a lot of my gaming time being on PC.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result, I'm already at my PC when I'm playing a game or when I want to play another game. It's like, oh yeah, I'll just play what's on my PC. And then I almost kind of forget about
Mm-hmm.
the games that are on my consoles, my mobile devices, like and Switch, and but I say mobile devices because there's also like a 3DS that I have games I want to play
Yeah.
on. So what I did this year was actually segment them into just completely platforms.
Okay.
And so that way I have a game that I'm playing on each platform,
Ooh.
and then from there, I can review like, okay, what game do I want to play today? And if it's on one of those other platforms, I'm just going to play it on that platform. And the idea is having no more than two games on each platform.
Mm-hmm.
That way, it kind of like balances out where I'm playing. And that way, I can get through my backlog in a more like organized way. Hopefully, it helps. We'll see how it goes.
Do you feel like it's kind of a
It sounds
chore?
like you have a question.
Oh, yeah, like
Wait, what was that?
do you think it's kind of like a chore, like when you have like a Switch game where you're like, ah, crap, I've been staring at X, Y, and Z forever. I should probably just finish it off so I can get to the next
That's
game.
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, I'm trying to avoid that.
Okay.
So really, realistically, it's all about like what I want to play.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I don't feel like playing the Switch game right now that I'm playing, by the way, is Super Mario Odyssey. I think
Oh,
you'd probably approve of that.
oh, I love that.
But if I don't feel like playing that at the moment, then I just
Mm-hmm.
won't play it.
Nice.
And I won't lie to you, a lot of the times for my Switch games, and this is definitely true for 3DS as well, it it only really truly becomes top of mind when I'm like out and about
Yeah.
and like maybe I'm at a family's house or I'm like bored doing something out and I may have my Switch on me. I was like, oh, okay, I'll just play this because I can't play other games, and this is like a good opportunity to pop out my Switch.
Mm-hmm.
But if I if I finish, like two PS5 games before I get to a single Switch game or vice versa, I'm not gonna like sweat it.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
just that's my Switch game. When I'm ready to play on my Switch or when I want to play that game, I'll hop onto it. But I don't try to make it like, oh, I need to finish a game in each of my platforms before I can move on. Like that would
Mm-hmm.
be a chore, and that's what
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to do, if that makes sense.
I feel that.
Um, so it's going pretty well so far. And I've also been trying to keep track of what like co-op games I'm playing because I feel like that's where I've spent the bulk of my time. And so it's good to I I didn't really need to track it because they're games that I'm just gonna play anyways
Yeah.
whenever like someone's available. But it's nice to know like, hey, what are the co-op games that I played this year? Which ones did I beat? So I added those as like a nice little side column as well.
Nice.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so moving on to the actual meat of the discussion. So the few things that I wanted to talk about, there's just three things. I'm gonna just quickly go through them, and then we kind of just like go through each
Love it.
one step by
Yeah.
step. So one thing that I wanted to talk about is where we think the gaming space is going. Like, what is gaming gonna look like in the next 2 to 5 years, right? And then how do you think that, or how do we both think that that will change? Like, is it going to be very similar to how it is right now? Do we feel like it's going to be evolving over that time period or maybe even 5 to 10 years? And then lastly, this is going to bring us to like the big elephant in the room, which is where do we think Xbox is going to be in 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
in 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously there's been so much discussion about what Xbox is doing, if it really makes sense for them to be doing what they're doing, and are they just going to be like a third party studio that's like what like alarmists might say, and then others might say like, oh no, this is nothing. This is just like where gaming is going. So I'm curious to see like what where both of us kind
Hmm.
of lie on that spectrum and see what our thoughts are, and maybe we can kind of like talk through
Hmm.
that because I feel like we haven't really sat down and talked about it too much, and this might be a good opportunity.
Love it.
All right. So we'll start with the first one.
Yeah.
So where do you think the gaming space is right now? Like, what do you think about how games are distributed right now? I know one of the things that you mentioned in a message earlier was like how subscription services kind of
Hmm.
fit into this discussion. So I'm gonna just let you go. Just
Yeah.
you start wherever you think makes sense. And what do you think?
Like I feel like, you know, gaming right now, I do know that mobile gaming is its own thing. That's not something I subscribe
Yeah.
to, and it's not something that like takes up my time. Like my phone is
Yeah.
literally for communication and social media, and that's about it. Like I don't I don't
Yeah.
really subscribe to that, so I won't have much to talk about. I feel like
Okay.
it's almost like a resurgence of an earlier age. I do feel like right
Mm.
now, we do have boxes. We do have boxes that have
Hmm.
exclusive titles that bring people to those boxes. I think there is a lot of convenience with those boxes, but I think, a lot of
Hmm.
people, I feel like there are, PlayStation portals, there are PCs, Steam Decks, like these things that are very, very niche and like very, very specific to a certain play style and a certain lifestyle. That it's really
Yeah.
cool. Like, I think that's kind of fun that there are people that like a PlayStation Pro, dude. I don't have a TV that's going to make any sort of difference. Like that's not for me. But for people that
Sure.
care about that thing, they have something for them. So
Yeah.
I like it. I like that there are very like niche parts of the gaming sphere. But
Yeah.
I feel like it's changing. I feel like something's changing. I know this is getting
Yeah.
to part two, but I feel like this might be the last time where I feel like everything is very, very segmented. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm happy with where it's at right now.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of agree with most of your points there. The one thing I will say, and I've always been this way too. You mentioned like how you never use your phone
Hmm.
to game.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because like you'd think people who consider themselves gamer, they'd game on everything. But
Yeah.
really, like neither of us have ever really gamed on our phone, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't know like what it is about it. Like I remember early on when like iPhones and smartphones were new, you'd play things like Flappy Bird and like
Yeah.
random games, but like I never really got dug in deep with like mobile gaming in general.
Hmm.
But the one exception I will say is recently, I think I already told you this, so it's not going to be a surprise, but I started playing Balatro on my iPhone.
Nice. Yeah.
And it's actually been a really cool experience because Balatro, for anyone who doesn't know, is a roguelite
Hmm.
poker game, right? And the thing about roguelites in general is that you don't really just drop them, you know? Like you could, obviously, like you beat it a few times, like, oh yeah, this was fun, and then you can just
Hmm.
drop them. But the big thing about roguelites is like you can just keep playing and you can keep experiencing like new ways to play the game and like new play styles, new decks, new things
Hmm.
unlock. So obviously that's like part of the experience with Balatro. And so for me, it's been a cool fit actually because I can just play it whenever. You know, like I'm
Hmm.
just bored or maybe I'm on a commute and I'm just waiting around for maybe 10 minutes. Why not just play some Balatro? And it's actually been a cool way to like experience a game that obviously has to be pretty simplistic where
Hmm.
I prefer personally to not have a controller, for example,
Yeah.
on an iPhone if I'm going to be gaming on it. I'd rather not look like an idiot. You know what I mean? Like I'm on the fucking sorry. I'm on the like trail on the train and like I'm just pulling out a controller, plug it into my phone. I don't know. It feels goofy.
Right. Yeah.
So I just want to be able to just like casually flip my iPhone on its side and just start playing some Balatro. And I'm curious because you say like you're using the portal more, have you ever considered using well, I know you have considered using it your phone in
Hmm.
the past and you've tried Backbone, for example. I'm curious why you think that isn't something that you'll use and why it's not something you use today either.
Yeah. I really love the backbone. The backbone was great. I think items like the portal where this huge, beautiful
Mhm.
screen with a very like ergonomic grip to it, like it has kind
Yeah.
of ruined it for me. Like to look at, I do not have like the most updated iPhone. I don't even know what iPhone I have, but like I probably should, make an adjustment on that. It it's just different. It's a downgrade. I will
Yeah.
say, I completely forgot about Balatro. It's one of those things that something about the gaming space right now that I'm not very happy about, that has been a
Uh-huh.
thing forever, and I think we're leaning more towards this eventually. Is cross save, cross progression amongst all these different consoles. We're
Yeah.
talking about multiple
Yeah.
consoles, PC, mobile. Like, I do not want to have these siloed experiences in Balatro. Like, I have played so many
Mm.
hours. It was my game of the year playing Balatro on
Mhm.
PlayStation. I refuse to buy it. I'll buy it again, but I refuse to
Yeah.
do it until I can have some sort of cross progression, because I don't want to start over. I want to like work on my platinum. That may never
Yep.
happen. If it did allow cross progression on mobile, I think I'd finally get the
Game
platinum,
over
because
probably, right?
I would, that would take over everything. I'd probably have to bring a battery around with me, because my iPhone would just die constantly from playing Balatro. But yeah, it's not something that I've ever really considered about doing, because I'm right there with you. I'm not gonna be whipping out a
Yeah.
controller. I'm not gonna be whipping out my backbone. Like, it's touch controls or nothing. And like, if I can
Yeah.
do this sneakily, or at least like I don't have to make a scene while playing it, I will.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely not been something that I've even thought about.
Okay, yeah, exactly. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. So it sounds like you might be kind of along the same lines as what I was saying too. Because, for example, if you did have a portal,
Mm-hmm.
right, or like a portal equivalent that had games stored on the device,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't you want to play those like wherever you are? And so, like, what would you want that device to look like? Do you want it to be your phone, or would
Mm-hmm.
it be ideal to have it be like an actual device like the Steam Deck, for example?
Yeah.
Because like for me, like opening up or holding this huge Steam Deck when I'm trying to like be out and about doing
Mm-hmm.
something seems a little unlikely for me to actually do it. But I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I like the thought of having a dedicated device towards gaming. I I don't
Yeah,
know what it is. Like, I there are um accessibility is not right, but when you have your backbone, like if you get a text or something and it pulls you out of the app, it doesn't shut
sure.
down, so you can like jump back in. I think it gives you like 5-10 minutes, something like that, which is nice.
Yeah,
But there's something about like when I'm playing a game, I don't want to be looking at my phone. I don't want to be like constantly,
sure.
oh, Stephon Diggs just signed a 3-year, $69 million deal with the Patriots. Like, I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want Bleacher Report, texting me as I'm, playing something. So there's
Sure.
something that I'm eyeing towards the days of our youth. Like, we grew up in the PSP, PS Vita, Nintendo DS, Game Boy,
Yeah.
even like all these eras of like these
Yeah.
standalone items, these portable devices that have gone by the wayside, but I feel like, dude, I feel like it's coming. Something is happening.
It
Like,
has to
I
be
feel
coming.
like either
Yeah,
Xbox
I
is going
think
to
so
release
too.
one, and PlayStation will come back. I think the Steam Deck and even Nintendo Switch, like this probably all started with the Nintendo Switch, just like
Yeah.
selling gangbusters. That I feel like that's happening, and I'm excited. I will be a day one
Yeah.
of whoever gets a portable that is worth it. I will be a day one buyer. Easy.
Yeah, yeah. Like as you were answering that, I was trying to think through like what it would look like for me too. Like what would I want to see? And I get what you're saying for sure about like you don't want to be distracted on your phone. But there are like certain ways around that. Like you could make it a focus mode whenever you're playing
True.
a game, and
Yep.
then that way you don't get notifications. Um, like the thing I always keep coming back to, I guess, is that I don't want it to look goofy or be like really hard to like carry with me
Yeah.
kind of thing, you know? And the phone seems like the perfect thing because obviously you always have your phone on you.
That's true.
So it would be nice, like you said, there are still some issues with that being on your phone, especially if you're streaming it, where you might lose connection if you switch off and then switch back too slowly. But if it's actually like on your phone and there's a dedicated version of that game on your phone in some form or fashion, uh, it would be pretty cool
Yeah.
because then you could just like, if you wanted to send a quick text, you can, but like you can just like lock in on whatever game you're playing and it has like specific accessibility options so that you can play either with a controller or without it. Um, it's really interesting. I really don't know what would really push me over the edge to play more mobile because like I obviously both of us don't really do it that often. But I'm curious what we will see, like you said, because I think, like you said, there's going to be a lot of new options in the near future for sure.
And even like if you have a Netflix account, you have games
Yeah,
on your phone. Like you don't even have to do anything
yeah,
about it. Like these are, small
true.
puzzle games. I know like there are specific console games and even VR games that have mobile versions. There's
Yep.
one game that's like Tell Me with Your Eyes, or there's some game it's similar to that, but basically like every time you blink, time
Uh-huh.
goes forward, and it was a VR game, and they
Oh,
actually released it on
that's
mobile
pretty
because they
cool.
can use the front facing camera, and like that is
Yeah,
that is cool. Like for someone like me who
that
I
is
do
cool.
not have a VR setup, I know that's not
Right.
the name of the game. I'm laughing at my like Tell Me with Your Eyes. That's definitely not a game, but it's something similar to that. But I think there's really cool things. Like you can play
Yeah,
a lot of really fun puzzle games from the past just straight in the Netflix app that you would be playing on your phone
yeah,
with touch controls. So I think a lot of people are trying to. And honestly, like when I've seen numbers in the past, I'm not going to quote them because can't remember them to save my life. But I there's a
yeah,
large portion of people that consider themselves gamers that do not have a console or PC. Like they are
yeah,
just mobile, and that is wild to
yeah.
me. Because when I'm talking to
Isn't it?
like gamers, I'm thinking about us.
Yeah,
Like I'm not thinking about like Meemaw playing Candy Crush. Like I don't consider like, ugh, what kind of
right.
filth is that? But that's a huge portion of the game community.
It is. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Which is really funny to think about for sure. And I think with the point that you made earlier about the like interoperability of them, where you
Mm-hmm.
can kind of use that cross progression between devices, I think to me, that's going to be really important if I ever want to play mobile.
Yeah.
That's going to that's going to be a key factor and a key driving force to get me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you, for example, when I got Balatro on my iPhone on iOS, uh, soon after, maybe like a few months after, Xbox Game Pass added Balatro. And so I could, if I wanted to, play it on my PC as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to
Yeah.
because I lose that progression. And
Exactly.
so obviously I'm just gonna keep playing it on my phone. And if I ever like am bored on my computer, I'm gonna play something else because I don't want that like disconnected experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think at least for me, it's gonna be a big deal if whatever company or hopefully all companies find a way to make it so cross progression is as accessible as possible. Because right now we see like a little bit of it, but to me it's just not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so where do we think, now that we talked about like where we are currently, where do we think we're going to be next gen, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you think there's going to be like true different options versus what we have today? Or is it going to be more or less the same and it's just going to be the way that games are delivered maybe could be different?
Yeah. I I feel like I have listened to podcasts that kind of prophesize what could happen next gen. Like no one really knows exactly
Sure.
what would
Yeah,
happen with
yeah.
next gen.
Yeah, we're
Um,
totally just in hypothetical land right now.
and and I kind of go back and forth because I think part of it, if I am Sony and Microsoft, Nintendo will leave out of this because they're gonna keep doing Nintendo things and they'll be fine.
All right.
Um,
Okay.
I think Sony and Microsoft, like we'll talk about Microsoft in particular, what their mindset of is their mindset to sell consoles, is their mindset to sell a box for you to do. PC gaming is
Mm,
something that has been a huge barrier of entry for a lot of people, and so that's why they go for the convenience of consoles.
sure.
Do we get to this
Yeah.
next gen as kind of like it's the Smash Ultimate of consoles? It's like everybody's here, and then like there's
Yeah.
modular increases, year after year, maybe a little bit more frequent than like the standard 7 to 8 year
Yeah.
console generation that we've been used to. Does this turn more
Hmm.
into like a phone? Like people buy new phones, iPhone 16, iPhone 17, where they're super
Yeah.
small, minute, modular improvements, but not
Yeah.
necessarily like these huge groundbreaking. We've got terabytes and teraflops and all these other things. Um,
Yeah.
I feel like we're getting to the point where every console generation we're getting less and less return. Like the difference in
Hmm.
them just doesn't feel the same. Going from
Yeah, for
SNES
sure.
to N64 to GameCube to Wii, like
Yeah.
those were
We
huge
had some big
leaps.
jumps,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So I feel like either there's part of me that thinks this is the last gen, like this coming gen is the last gen,
Mm,
and then it's just like modular
sure.
increases. But there's part of me
Yeah.
that's like, nope, they're just going to keep doing what they're doing. Like moms and pops will keep buying this for their grandkids and their kids. Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, I don't
So
know.
so in that example that you gave me, where you said that maybe this next gen will be the final gen, and then it'll be like incremental slash modular updates from there. What, in this hypothetical scenario, what
hmm
would be the cadence for newer updates from there?
Like I
Like, where's
feel
your mind going there?
in my mind it would be like halving the gen, like maybe like every
Okay,
3 years, kind of like similar to how like a
sure.
PlayStation 4, a PlayStation 4 Pro, PlayStation 5, now
Uh-huh.
PlayStation 5 Pro, kind of like these modular increases that just help with the current hardware and make it better.
Yeah.
I
But
don't
it'll be
know,
like at
like the halfway mark. Yeah,
keep
yeah,
going,
yeah.
sorry. Yeah,
Um,
it's like double the speed, but same
exactly.
process overall.
Yeah. I do
Okay.
wonder how this affects development. Like there are,
Yeah,
even
that's
with
true.
these small incremental changes, like a lot of these bigger
Yeah.
games, unfortunately, with the gaming industry, it takes 5 years. Like some of these people that have canceled
Yeah.
projects, they're like, okay, well their next project won't be out for 5 or 6 years. Like it takes that long to
Yeah.
really work on these games. So I feel
Right.
like the gaming industry would have to be a lot more flexible and be able to
Hmm.
pump out these projects a lot quicker than they are for this to be a reality. Because I don't know if
Yeah.
they'd really be able to do anything else with the new firepower that they get so quickly.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very good point. I mean, honestly, we've seen I so this is kind of a tangent, but
Yeah.
based on like what you just said at the end there, it does seem like, especially with these bigger games that keep releasing, these
Mm-hmm.
triple A games or whatever you want to call it, those are the ones that are having these extended timelines, and those are the ones that are going to be like negatively impacted by if this sees a accelerated growth, because then you have this like dev kit that you're expecting, this is what I'm making this game for, is this console or this box, and then like halfway through you're being told that, oh no, we're going to start selling this newer box, you need to make sure your game is good enough for that box so that we can sell that box, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely a good point. And I do wonder in general if that's just not sustainable from
Yeah.
a game dev perspective, because you have these like huge timelines that honestly, it doesn't make too much sense when you think about it, because usually you're trying to make a game that makes sense at the time that you created it, or like thought about it in your head,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you're waiting 6 years to release that game, whatever like innovations you thought you had in the game initially aren't going to be innovations necessarily in 6 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's going to be so many new games that came out between when you first had that initial thought to when it actually got released, where you might not even seem like an innovative game anymore, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. So I feel like those AAA live service games, and I really, fingers crossed, I really hope they're on their way out,
Yeah.
because it we've seen so many flops with those kind of games that it makes sense to kind of go back to basics a little bit, or at least kind of rein it in a bit, where
Mm-hmm.
you're not just constantly churning out these huge games that take so much time, and then you're not sure if you're gonna end up having the game of the year or like the embarrassing flop of the year, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So that's definitely a good point. I'm trying to think through kind of what you said about like where you think we're going. Honestly, I don't think I totally disagree. Like what you're saying actually makes a lot of sense, and it wouldn't surprise me if that happened. But I do wonder like how sustainable this current model of selling devices on a like 8-year cadence
Mm-hmm.
really is. Because it just, I don't know, to me it doesn't seem like it matches everything else that we do as far as like entertainment and other hardware that we
Mm-hmm.
have. For example, like an iPhone, right, or your smartphone that you might
Yeah.
use. Most or a lot of people anyway I know you just said you don't know which iPhone you have, so I kind of like reined that in a little bit. But most people upgrade these like every 2 or 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I do wonder like how susceptible or how willing a gaming audience would be to that kind of time frame as well. Like, what if, for example, that like Microsoft, Sony, they just end up releasing a new console every 2 years,
Yeah.
just as like a thought experiment. Could that work? You have these like small improvements, just like say AMD or NVIDIA have small improvements every time they release a new graphics card. Why can't Microsoft and Sony have small incremental improvements and just remove generations as like
Mm-hmm.
a thing in gaming? What do you think about that? Like, is that something that you think is plausible, or do you feel like it doesn't make sense with the way like people game?
Yeah, like it's kind of like the return on investment on developing these consoles and like these iterations. Like iPhones, so many like millions and millions of people will purchase. Is iPhone 16 happening right now? Is
Yeah.
that the new thing? I just looked it up. I have an
Yeah,
iPhone
yeah.
12. So
You
a
have a
little bit of
what?
ways. A 12.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Um, so like millions of people will purchase these iPhone
Um,
16s, and that's
right.
just not realistic for like a console that would release, you know, every 2 years.
Sure.
You know, like
Yeah,
there
because it's not a
are,
mainstream product.
yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
exactly. So I feel like just from a cost of making it and selling it, I don't know if that necessarily matches. I do
Yeah.
think that there's part of me that's like, do is 8 years necessary? Like, is that as
Hmm.
much that we can squeeze out of a console generation? Because in my
Yeah.
mind, I'm trying to think back. I've had a PlayStation 5 since release. I'm trying to think back of like a truly PlayStation 5 required game that I've had.
Right.
Like,
There's not many.
it is 2025 and Power Wash Simulator
Yeah.
2 just said no to PlayStation 4. But this entire
Yeah.
time, like games are
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
releasing on both. And it's like,
Right.
do we need one? Do it? I'm looking at my PlayStation 5. I'm looking at my Xbox Series X. Like, do we need this next gen now? Like, this probably going to be announced in the next couple years. And that is surprising to me.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm going though, is like basically this gen is that idea
Mm-hmm.
in some ways where you think about it and you can say, well, is this truly next gen, or is this
Mm-hmm.
just another alternative or new option for people who want the best of the best?
Yeah,
Because technically a lot of the games that we've had this current gen, like you said, are on those previous
that's a good point.
generation
Yeah.
consoles, right? So you could have a PS4, you could have an Xbox One, and you can play these games. It might not play amazingly, but you could play them.
Yeah.
And most of the time, people like what they're playing on these consoles are games that have been around, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Fortnites, the
Like
Call
Kingdom
of
Hearts 2.
Duties, whatever else. What'd you say?
Like Kingdom Hearts 2. I'm playing that
Yeah,
on my
yeah.
PlayStation 5.
These are all games that you can play on like whatever console, whatever box you have, right? So it just makes me wonder, do we need to have these generations? Do we need to make, I don't know, like 20 million of these boxes every time we make it, you know? Like, can we make a PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 6 and just make 5 million of them and then
Yeah.
eventually you'll sell them and then you get the next one kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. I wonder, is there a way, because right now it's very easy to customize a PlayStation 5. Like you can add in additional
Hmm.
SSD
Oh,
options and
sure. Yeah.
storage and things like that. Is there a
Yeah.
way for them to design these new boxes where you can
Oh,
almost take out stock,
yeah.
pieces and put in new ones?
Yeah.
So instead of making a
That would
full
be
new
interesting.
box of like, okay, hey, Nvidia or AMD or all these other things,
Yeah.
like they have designed this new thing, and if you really want to play your PlayStation the best it can be,
Yeah.
buy it
Right.
now for $60, $100, whatever it is, and they can put
Yeah.
that little PlayStation logo on there and upsell that thing to $120 and like really pump these bad
Yeah.
boys out. Like I almost see something where
Hmm.
this is just a dumbed down PC at a point. Like we are getting to the point where,
If you're, yeah.
like, if we're getting to this point, like people will still buy for the convenience of being able to sit on their couch and play their
Right.
games and at least have their
Yeah.
PC, their PlayStation PC, in their little console table. I don't know. I could see it. I could see it. I just don't know. For me, I'm willing to do that. I'm not super tech savvy, but I'm not a complete idiot with it. But like for, I don't
Yeah.
know, a cousin of mine, I have a coworker that just bought a Nintendo Switch for the first time, and I'm like, why? Like,
Yeah.
you don't know what's around the corner. But two, like
Yeah. They
for
have no
those
idea. They don't
people,
care.
yeah, they don't care and they're
Yeah.
living their best life. Like they're like, did
Yeah.
you know Mario Kart 8 is on the Nintendo Switch? And I was like, oh my gosh, you sweet summer child. Um, like for people like that, that
Yeah.
is not going to be something that they're
Right.
going for. But maybe the
Right.
stock would be fine enough forever.
Right. It would be. I think it would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, what you're saying about like this option for customizing and upgrading, you're basically just talking about like a mini PC, like you
Yeah.
basically said afterwards. And I do wonder like how close we're gonna get to like consoles becoming just a hybrid of that
Mm-hmm.
model. I do think we're gonna, and spoiler alert, I do think we are gonna get there pretty soon. But I think that is where we're heading, honestly. And like you said, not everyone's gonna want to do it, and not everyone's gonna be capable of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I feel like saying PC is the future of gaming is just not accurate because I've said it to you and I've said it to a lot of my friends. Like gaming PCs, I don't think are for everyone
Yeah.
because it actually is a hassle, especially when you're kind of like new to the IT side of it and like the inner workings of like how does Microsoft or how does Windows work? Why is this happening to me? Like you're gonna have a lot of these instances where like it's not working and I
Yeah.
can't figure out how. And I
Mm-hmm.
have to go on Reddit to figure it out. Like no one wants to do that, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I don't think gaming PCs are going to be just like the only thing we have in the future. That's that exact thing that I just mentioned, that scenario is exactly why we have consoles.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to have a hybrid version of this, it has to be as simple as possible. So if you're going to upgrade the GPU, it's got to be super simple. You like click a button, it pops out, you pop in the
Yep.
new one. That's the
Mm-hmm.
only way. And I'm curious if that's something that could be possible. I don't see why not.
Mm-hmm.
It just obviously would have to be, they would really have to rethink how they design these consoles because
Yeah.
right now they're all about like being flashy, being very storage efficient, which
Mm-hmm.
both are like nice things at the moment because these live in our living rooms. You want it to look nice, you want it to not take up too much space. But if you want to have that kind of versatility and compatibility, you need to make it a little bit bigger. And
Yeah.
you need to make it so that you can have these like storage devices where this is where the GPU goes and it's super straightforward. You can watch a YouTube video and figure it out in 5 minutes. I think that's possible, and I think that would be really interesting. And so maybe that kind of leads us into our final point here, which is like talking really, really talking through like what is Xbox doing right now? Because a lot of people feel like they're trying to like destroy their business. At least the biggest fans will have you think this is like catastrophic. This is not like going to be sufficient for them in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And this might be them doing away with their console business so that they can focus in on PC. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that's true, but I do think they are likely pushing themselves towards a like hybrid model, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, or like you've kind of mentioned. Um, this would have been even more interesting to talk about last month because I feel like since then we've had some leaks and nothing's been confirmed, but it also does seem like it's moving closer and closer to that likely being the scenario. So I'm curious, I'm gonna just let you start first. Where do you think Xbox is headed right now? Do
Mm-hmm.
you think it makes sense? Um, or is there like a specific reason why you think that you probably won't get another Xbox and why you think they're not going in the right direction?
Yeah. And I don't want to sound like an alarmist because I'm really not. Like I think this
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense for
No, I know.
Xbox. I think they
Yeah,
are leaning towards getting out of the like classical console business. Like they are not trying to sell
yeah,
you the next Xbox. And I think previously that
yeah.
was the plan. Now I feel like
Right.
their mindset is play everywhere. Like this is an Xbox,
Hmm.
this is an Xbox, this is an Xbox. Like wherever if there's a
Such a weird
screen,
ad campaign, but yeah,
there's a way for
yeah,
Phil Spencer to be there. And he'll be there open arms with his subscription service of $15.99 or $17.99 or whatever it is right now. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's their play. Like, this doesn't mean that they're only
Mhm.
going to be third party. They are just shipping these out to PlayStation. I think what this does look like is, for the next generation of Xbox fans, there are going to be people that need a console. They need a console. They're not going to be playing on a Fire Stick. They're not going to be playing on an app.
Right.
They're not going to be
Right.
playing on you know Xbox subscription service on PlayStation or Nintendo Switch. Like,
Hmm.
I think they will still make maybe an underpowered and an overpowered console like they've been doing. But I just
Hmm.
don't think that that's kind of what makes them feel joy in their heart anymore. It's not about winning like a console war. It's really about how
Sure.
can we get Xbox everywhere. And so, I think
Hmm.
with that, that is them kind of swallowing their pride and saying, hey, Starfield, it's coming. It's coming to PlayStation. The DLC that's been announced, that's going to be day and date with
Yeah.
PlayStation. And I think that's good. I honestly think
Yeah.
PlayStation is outselling Xbox by a lot. And so
Yeah.
in my mind, I feel like have it there. And I don't think that's a bad thing. They're making bukus of money. Like, Microsoft, if anything else, Microsoft is going to be a healthier company than Sony in the gaming industry, I feel like forever, because they've purchased enough to where these are just like cash cows. It's basically like your mom and pop car wash. Like, they're just like, they buy this car wash, they just set it up and they just watch it. They just watch
Yeah.
Activision just rake in this money. And I think,
Yeah.
going to PlayStation is going to be really fruitful for them and hopefully give some stability to the gaming industries to where people can pump out some really, really great games. So I think
Okay.
that's where I think they're going. I'd like to hear your thoughts before I talk about kind of my feelings on if my
Yeah.
Xbox console is the last one I buy. But what do you think
Yeah.
about it?
Okay. So I think you make a lot of good points, and I think a lot of this kind of revolves around what we've seen as far as like the success of the most recent Xboxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Xbox One, the series consoles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Obviously, we've seen they've sold less than obviously Nintendo or Sony, and we see that their market share is overall diminishing, and you see less sales in general of their games because of Game Pass, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
Game Pass is obviously shifting the way that people play their games, and I think we're going to see a lot of that kind of um, the negative aspects of a subscription service leak their way into PlayStation with how they're doing their PS Plus as well. Um, so a lot of that has guided the kind of the discussion of like, oh, they need to do these things to kind of surrender the white flag and say, okay, you can choose if you want a console in the future, but we're gonna make sure that wherever you play your games, you can play our games and you
Mm-hmm.
can give us money to play our games, right? And if you want it to be, if you have a subscription service where you'll pay us to play on Game Pass, that's great. If you want to pay $70 for the next Halo on PlayStation, you know what? That's great too.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it seems like they're headed towards. That's their seemingly their trajectory, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Um, and so you have Xbox fans who I can understand, like, that is that seems like a negative trajectory to you because now you don't have a true reason to buy an Xbox, right? Because any game that you can play there, you can play on another console. And if you choose to buy an Xbox, okay, well, why can't I play The Last of Us, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a really good game. Why can't
Yeah.
I buy the next God of War? I want to play that game, right? And so to me, I think that discussion is missing a really important key point that people are just not talking about. And we're starting to see it more and more now with some of these leaks. But like, to me, this was like the obvious set of events that was going to take place. That's going to allow them to have a console in the future that's also very competitive. And here's what it is. The next console has to be able to play PC games. straight up. And that is not, to me, a very difficult or ambitious thing to say. Honestly, I don't see why Xbox hasn't done this way
Yeah.
sooner. Literally, Microsoft owns Windows, they own Xbox. What's the holdup? I don't know
Right.
like how this
Yeah.
hasn't happened yet, but literally, if they do that one thing, guess what? The vast majority of PlayStation exclusives are now going to be on your next Xbox.
Yeah.
Because you can't say like, "Oh yeah, this is a PC game, but you can only play it on these specific operating systems." It's going to have a version of Windows on this next box, but the idea is a console is a console. Like you don't need just because it's a PC and it can play PC games doesn't mean it's not a console anymore.
Yeah.
Like for example, there is currently a console that's not a PlayStation that can play the vast majority of PlayStation games, and it's called the Steam Deck. The
Yeah.
Steam Deck is a console, as far as
Yeah.
I'm aware.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a console-like operating system, and it's got a like dev kit where all developers know, hey, this is the configuration of the Steam Deck. This is what you need to keep in mind if you want to make sure your game runs well on the Steam Deck. And so what Microsoft needs to do is just their version, their spin of the Steam Deck. Whether it be they want it to be a like portable that you can also plug into your TV, like a Switch,
Mm-hmm.
or have their own SKUs for console versus like the box that plugs into your TV and a device that you can carry around. They could have two separate devices as well. But that's the obvious solution is okay, we're gonna have this. This is our plan. What reason do we have to have exclusives at this point? Especially if we want to prioritize making sure that we make money on the games that we're investing millions of dollars in. Let them be non-exclusives.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Sony is going to release games on PC. It just so happens that we're going to have a console that runs PC games. And so it's not going to be an issue for us.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Like I don't know why you're the first person I've heard that from, honestly. Like, and I listen
Yeah, I don't
to
feel like many people have talked about it, but does it sound so outlandish? I
no,
don't know. I
like
feel like I'm missing something, to be
no, it makes
honest.
sense. Like it makes perfect sense because I'm preparing for the second half of this question of saying, you know, I don't think I utilize my Series X very much at all
Yeah,
because I have
right.
limited
Sure.
gaming time and I've just consolidated a
Hmm.
lot of my gaming to one console. And like in my
Yeah.
mind, I'm like, I think I'll do less. Like I don't think that I will get next gen of everything. And whether it's a PlayStation or Xbox,
Yeah.
that's its own separate thing. I do think I'll continue to always play Nintendo Switch game or Nintendo Switch 2, 3, 4,
You'll
whatever.
always have that console no
I'll
matter what.
always have that. But as far
Okay.
as PlayStation, Xbox, there's so much overlap.
Yeah.
If you look at the PlayStation Plus
Sure. Yeah.
catalog, it's the same.
Yeah.
It's the exact same as Game
Yeah.
Pass. Like
Yeah.
they
Right.
are just duplicating the same stuff. And for me, the reason why I, in my mind, would favor PlayStation is because if Xbox is bringing it to PlayStation, why wouldn't I
Right.
just play PlayStation? And then
It
you
makes
are
sense.
bringing this excellent argument of what if Xbox brought in, PC games and PlayStation games? And I'm thinking, oh wow, actually that's going to be a difficult decision. Like if they did that, that would make it a very difficult decision because there's games like UFO 50. Dude, why is UFO 50 only on PC? Like why? That makes
There's quite a few
zero.
games that are like built for PC, and then
It just
in
stays
my
there.
experience, it's usually like an indie dev, right?
It
Like they
is.
can't
Yeah.
usually have enough resources to make games for other consoles as well. So they start with one, and maybe that's
Mhm.
PC, and then they kind of like slowly move their way to others. But yeah, there's a lot of examples of that for sure.
It's I'm expecting in a week we'll have Switch 2. Like there has been speculation that
Mm.
UFO 50 will be coming to Switch 2 as kind of like a launch game, and then it'll come to consoles because they've been hinting about it. But I have been
Hmm.
like just so excited for UFO 50, and it's one of those games that I wish I could play it. Like it's been inaccessible for at least a year for me, and that's one of those things where if they were to bring PC to Xbox, that would change the game. And I do think that it's still in their mindset of like more games for more players. Like that is still their mindset. And I don't necessarily if it's like them trying to come back into the console space, but I think it just makes perfect sense. Like why doesn't
Yeah.
that like why is that reality not here? Like I just don't understand.
Yeah.
Now you're making me
I don't
mad
get it
because I'm
either.
like, now I haven't thought about it, but now I am thinking about it.
Well,
And it just
listen,
makes perfect sense.
the last couple consoles that we had, the PS4, Xbox One generation, and the PS5 Series X generation, those have been like bona fide PC consoles. Like
Yeah.
literally the architecture for those consoles are very similar, if not identical, to similar spec PCs. It's just the nice thing about consoles, especially for devs, is they know exactly what the configuration is. They don't
Mm-hmm.
need to worry about the millions of configurations that a PC gamer could put together. And so that's why I feel like it's so important that consoles stay, and they will.
Mm-hmm.
It's just Microsoft has such a clear opportunity here because they own the PC
Yeah.
operating system that 99% of people use, that it just seems like it would make too much sense not to do, especially at this point where you've kind of bled dry what you can do on your just console operating system, and you see that business strategy just isn't working,
Right.
right? And you see that you have these trove of amazing game devs that you have at your disposal now, and you have the resources to make a great box, whatever that may be, because they have a long line of history of hardware, obviously. And Microsoft, they don't care if they sell 20 million or 200 million, as long as they have a consumer base for it,
Mm-hmm.
say like the Surface Book, no one usually is going to say the Surface Book over the MacBook, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they still make it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they have a loyal fan base that likes it and they know how to make it and they have the resources. Why
Mm-hmm.
not make it? Um, so that's why I also think there's no way that they just like get rid of Xbox hardware either. It's just how do you maneuver it to make sense in the ecosystem? And this seems like the only way it makes sense, especially when you're, like we talked about, giving away your exclusives. That has to be with the future thought of, well, okay, we're gonna make sure that we're not gonna get it's not going to be like a one-sided affair, right? Like
Yeah.
we're going to get exclusives from the other side too. And the funny part is it's not really PlayStation that's, allowing it, but
Yeah.
rather, oh yeah, you remember those PC ports? Well,
Yeah.
guess what? We own PC operating systems, so we can just run your games. And so that's gonna be a really funny if that happens,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna be really funny to see like how that completely changes the relationship between the console makers, right?
Yeah.
Because to me, that would be a huge change in the like way things are, the way the gaming industry is ordered right now. And it's gonna be really interesting to like I just don't know how we haven't seen
Yeah.
people talk about this. I just
Mm-hmm.
don't get it.
Yeah.
But to your point though, we have seen leaks recently where there's an Xbox operating system that shows a little tab for Steam games. And
Mm.
so these are like the small leaks that are trickling in. And by the way, after that leaked, they took down it was an image from Xbox's blog
Oh,
that they like
awkward.
took down afterwards. Like, oh, oops, we weren't supposed to share that. So it's
April
probably like
Fools.
something that they're still working on, but like that's awkward that I got that
Yeah.
up. But obviously, like these are little like breadcrumbs that we're starting to see now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I still think personally that they need like a box
Mm-hmm.
because obviously we have a version of a mobile device that can play Steam games or PC games, and that's the Steam Deck, that's the Rogue Ally,
Mm-hmm.
and it's good to introduce yourself into that market, but you need to do that, in my opinion, with a box in mind as
Mm-hmm.
well, a console that can plug into a TV, and that's its main like utility because
Mm-hmm.
that's what people are used to, right? That's what you and I have done for the majority of our lives. That's what people are going to want in their living rooms versus something like a Steam Deck that's growing but isn't like the main thing that people
Mm-hmm.
are looking for when they want to upgrade.
I think, one separate piece to this that, I'm not worried. I think I'm cautious about in the future, because there's
Hmm.
definitely some legal action that that goes out against PlayStation actually about kind of like their price gouging that they have on their own PlayStation store. When we have these
Oh,
silo storefronts like PSN, like I have a digital PS5. I have no opportunity to do anything except for
sure.
PSN, unless it's a subscription service. And so opening up your hardware to allow for a complete different storefront, whether like if you have a Steam page, like Steam sales like are crazy. Like I've only heard
They're amazing.
I've heard fables of them. Like I've never experienced them, but I've heard about them. But having that to kind of be healthy competition for the rest of console
Yeah,
gaming, like
exactly.
that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
And honestly, like money's getting tight, in a lot of places around the country and like the world. And
Yeah.
it's like, it'd be
Yeah.
nice. Like it would be nice to have some healthy competition, and that's only going to help consumers. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I really hope some of these kind of like legal actions against PlayStation, specifically, it's been PlayStation, but I think anybody could be guilty of this. I think that's something that's probably the least consumer friendly for me. And I do worry that if we do get to this point where if Xbox doesn't like go full force and it's just like status quo, they don't bring like a
Hmm.
killer app, to the table, and it becomes more and more consolidated to one silo, especially if we're all going digital. I worry about that being an opportunity
Hmm.
for, the rich getting rich and it just be really hard to find kind of accessible games.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point too. Honestly, I do hope that we get into this point where, like we talked about with the cross progression, we have these options to play in different places and to get games in different places.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's what I think is so unique about PC games in general, is not only do Steam get their sales, but there actually are third-party retailers
Hmm.
that sell CD keys
Yep.
for these games all over the internet. And
Yeah.
so every time there's a Steam sale, those sites also get sales.
Hmm.
And the prices that you can get these games for are way better than what you'd get on the console side. And that's both PlayStation and Xbox,
Yeah.
and obviously Nintendo. We don't even talk about how bad they've been as well with like, I don't know, 10-year-old games that are
Hmm.
selling for $40.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But that's
Nintendo,
like the
the
state of
Nintendo
the industry,
tax.
right? Like we just think it's normal now, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like
And
even Amazon and like some of these third parties, they do sell digital codes. I've bought digital codes for Xbox, like for certain games,
yeah,
but I don't even think that's available for PlayStation, which is wild to
I don't
me.
think it is either.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
which doesn't make sense to me
No.
either. Um, the one other thing, because we're talking about like consumer and like prices as well, that I thought about is I wonder how much the next gen consoles are actually going to cost.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that we've gotten used to for such a long time was that these companies are going to sell consoles or whatever box they're selling at a loss,
Hmm.
and then they're going to recoup that money via game sales. And I think, I don't know, I feel like been very, we've been blessed as
Yeah.
gamers for a very long time where I feel like we get so much value out of the devices that we use and the games that we play. And I feel like we get more value than a lot of other media types that
Hmm.
you can compare it to. Like when you go out to the movies, how much are you paying? When
Yep.
you pay for Netflix, how much are you paying? When you pay for an iPhone, how much are you paying? Why haven't we seen the same thing in gaming? I'm honestly not sure. Like, I wonder if the PS5 Pro is only like the tip of the iceberg, where
Hmm.
we see more and more options that are like much more expensive than you'd expect. But it's with the idea that this is like future proof. This is gonna make sure that you get the games at the best of the best experience if that's something that you can afford and are willing to spend the cash on. And if you're not, well, we do have these like lower end SKUs or middle SKUs that allow you to still play the games and enjoy them, but you might have some like trade-offs,
Hmm.
just like you do with any game and any game today, right? Like you've had multiple consoles that it's going to release to, and you've got multiple versions of the game in PC. I feel like we're going to have more and more hardware options, and I think the prices might go up.
Yeah. I think so.
What do you think about that?
like I think next week will be pretty indicative of like Switch 2. Like that'll be
Yeah,
the
that's a good
first next
point.
gen in a while, and I think
Yeah.
there is a lot of speculation on what it could be. 399, 449, 499, and
I
like
think Nintendo has to keep it cheap though. I don't think they have a
I
choice.
would
Do
think
you?
so, but there's part of me too that's like could they at the same time offer a Switch
Uh-huh.
2 Lite? Like Joy-Cons do not go
Oh,
like it really depends on if there's an extra
yeah.
gimmick with the Joy-Cons, if whether that's a
Yeah.
possibility, but is there a cheaper way for them to make it and
You know,
give it so that people can have accessibility? Also at the same time, it's I don't know if Switch 2 is going to be necessary. Like I don't know how many Switch 2 only games are even going to be at launch or
that too.
even within the
Yeah.
first window. So do they care? Like I don't know. Because there's going to be people like me.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I don't think that there's a price that they could put that I won't buy. Like I am pretty
Yeah.
sure that I have enough cash just lying around. I guess I'll just look for pennies now. Like I
Damn,
will
man.
scrounge it.
Jeez.
I'll scrounge it up. Like I'll pick up some hours, whatever I have to do, because I've just been dying for something, just some
Yeah.
addition to the Switch family. So um, I think that's going to
Yeah.
be the tip of the iceberg. Because if Nintendo goes expensive, there's no way
That
PlayStation
would be
6 and
crazy.
Xbox Series X 2, 5, whatever it is, like doesn't
Yeah.
just double that price, like double, like $100 more, $150 more, like easy. Because
Yeah.
it was weird. I think was it PlayStation 3 that went like overboard. It was like 499,
Yeah.
and that was like unheard of
Yeah.
coming from PlayStation 2. I think at the end of the PlayStation 2 life cycle, you could pay for a Slim for 99.99, like at Toys R Us or whatever it
Yeah.
was at that point.
Which was
And
amazing
then
deal.
PlayStation 3 came out, it was like 499, and they almost lost a lot of goodwill that they built up in the entire generation. Um, and then I feel like it's kind of knocked down, and they've just been okay with taking a loss. And I think you're right. Like I think we're at the point where I don't know if they're going to do that again. I think these are going to be pretty expensive, and I'm kind of just bracing myself for the next like few years. Whenever it gets announced, I
Yeah.
expect these to be, they're going to be mini PCs, and what PC is less than $1,000? And I don't think they're going to get to a thousand
Right.
bucks, but I think they
That
can
would be,
get.
yeah, I don't think so either.
I think they could definitely reach the $500 $600 at base for some of these big, PlayStation or Xbox.
Yeah. I agree. I think the next gen consoles, especially for Microsoft and Sony, I could see them releasing a SKU that's like 800, $900.
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to be unheard of, but they will have other options,
yeah,
whether it be like the mobile option, whether it be the the lower end SKU that's going to be
yep.
around 500, $400. But they're going to have higher end options, I think. And we're seeing more and more that I was just listening to one of Game Over Greggy's podcasts, actually,
Okay.
kind of funny, where they were talking about how like a lot of the income that like your typical console gamer has right now is actually going up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so you have that wiggle room if you wanted to say release a bigger or more expensive console where you have these console gamers that are considered enthusiasts that are going to
Mm-hmm.
buy a bunch of games every year. Whereas you have your general population, which may or may not upgrade, and they may or may not even buy a single game this year,
Yeah.
which is like a huge divide, right? So I think companies are going to have to cater to both one way
Mm-hmm.
or another. It's just going to be interesting to see like what options are going to be out there. But I agree with you. I think there is going to be more expensive options than we're used to because like we see this all the time with like iPhones, for example, where you're spending a grand. But as long as you can make it so that you have these like trade-in deals to make it a little bit easier to swallow, like they do with phones,
Yeah.
I think it could work. But you're kind of relying on GameStop if you're going to do that.
Yeah.
I do wonder if you're going to see more of those programs from other places. Like I know Best Buy does it as well. I wonder if Microsoft and Sony will have their own version of that. Um, because that might be an easy way to say like, oh, okay, we understand this is $800, but hey, give us your old PS5, we'll give you $200 for it, you know?
Yeah.
That seems reasonable,
That seems
especially if you're going to
reasonable.
keep the generations like these longer extended periods. Like, oh yeah, you got so many years out of that PS5. We'll give you a couple $100 for it, and then we'll recycle it for the
Hmm.
parts, kind of thing, or sell it to someone else
Yeah.
while we sell you a PS6.
Yeah. Listen, I have a friend that still he only buys last gen games, like last gen
Yeah,
consoles. Like I I
right.
think he just recently updated to this current gen because he got it like cheap
Yeah,
somewhere. Like he got it cheap at a GameStop or something.
right.
And he's living his best life. Like he is living in 2021 right now. And there's a lot of great games that came out that year and he's just living it.
Yeah,
Like he got a lot of these games
exactly.
for free for $5, $10. Like
Yeah.
Xbox for enthusiasts, like I would still consider ourselves enthusiasts, even though, you know,
Oh yeah.
I'm not
Both of
paying
us are
for
definitely. Yeah.
I'm not paying for, you know, a high end PlayStation 5 Pro. That's like an extra
Sure.
level of enthusiasm. But like I'm paying for new games. Like I'm gonna get Death Stranding
Yeah.
2. I might even cop out that extra $10 to get it a few days early if I'm off, you know, that week. So like
Yeah.
I'm gonna pay I pay hundreds of dollars in games each year. And I
Hmm.
know like that makes me happy. I like being part of the zeitgeist. I like talking to other people about it. But dude, if you wanted to play games that cheap, like there's nothing stopping you from like starting at NES and going from there. So, yeah,
Yeah.
there's definitely stuff out there. But I'm excited. I don't want to be all doom and gloom because I do think
Yeah.
the best is yet to come as they're figuring this stuff out. So I can't wait to see. But we also have a ton of games to go before this gen is done. So here it
I
is.
My backlog is ridiculously long.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but like I still have so many games that I want to play.
Mm-hmm.
And so I I'm not quite the same as far as like I want to get every game or I like circle several games every year, but I mean, I'm still with you. Like I still buy several new games a year too, and I think we're just in a I don't think you and I are the general population that
No.
either
Yeah.
of these two companies are selling to be completely honest. Like I just bought Monster Hunter Wilds and I'm having a great time with that, but most people literally are still playing Fortnite
Yeah.
or like whatever game they've been playing for the last like 10 years. So that's tough. And so I think they're gonna have to think about like how do we maintain this business because we can't rely on people to be buying video games as soon as they come out.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean? Does it mean a subscription service? Does it mean that we increase the prices of the consoles? I don't know, but it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of change happening for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the good news is fingers crossed there's going to be more options than we had before.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing. And hopefully that's something that we see from all the companies. But I'm very curious to see like what really develops in the next few years. And I think we've covered a lot of it, but we'll see how right or wrong we are.
All right. Let's put it in a
All right,
time
any
capsule.
last?
Let's see what happens.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. For what it's worth, if we're idiots, just remember this is March 2025. We didn't know better, okay?
That's right.
Don't yell at us.
We had no idea. We had no idea
We
GTA
had
6
no
was coming
idea.
out in 2027, not 2025. Just kidding.
Matt, it's been a great time chatting with you. Thank you for joining me on this special fireside chat. Thank you, Grandmaster Doug, for the tunes, and we will see you next time on the next mainline episode of our XP podcast. See ya.